weeks to go, let the games begin. It's a fantasy league. Gonna make some noise within. Got my team assembled, ready to take the crown. I'll dominate this league, tear it down to the ground. I've got my strikers up top, ready to score the goals. Midfield maestro in the show, control the flow. Defensive wall standing tall, won't let them through. Goalkeeper with the gloves, gonna save me too. 38 weeks to go, gonna rule this game. I'm the boss, yeah, I'll take fame with my fantasy team. Gonna rise to the top, no one can stop me. Gonna make them drop.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to 38 Weeks to Go, your weekly podcast about fantasy football. I am your host, Nash, and let's get into it. I don't know about you, but for me, the easiest way to describe this week is disappointment. By looking at the teams and the points, it's clear to see what people were thinking. So let me just go over a few themes and ideas that dominated the weekend. Number one, everybody believed in Liverpool. Everybody believed Liverpool were going to hammer Nottingham Forest. And that did not go quite as planned. I had some friends even wildcard into Liverpool. 3 players. Jota, 2. Luis Diaz, 2. Salah, 2. I'm so sorry. The best laid plans just go to waste. So now, imagine, you are the kind of guy who doesn't have Haaland, and now Salah is your captain. I'm so sorry. I just know that you are very pissed off with fantasy right now. Then, there are the dummies like me. So, I was one of those people who was like, okay, Liverpool have kept 3 clean sheets in a row. I have to get into Liverpool. So what did I do? I have Vardiol and Ben White. I removed I removed Ben White and brought in Robertson because, of course, easy clean sheet. And then what happens? Arsenal keep the bloody clean sheet and Manchester City. You know, Pep said pre-season is over now. And I guess that meant that Pep roulette begins. Vardiol and Rico Lewis substituted each other. So if you had one of each, you had 1-1 because they played 45 minutes basically. And then if you're like me and you also have Bernardo Silva, 1. So it was very disappointing. And I have to move off Bernardo Silva. International duty tends to affect fixtures. Pretty much every team that had people who traveled far were disappointed. Look at what happened with João Pedro. Didn't start. Everybody has flocked to Madueke. Then guess who scores? Nkunku. A bunch of you got off Arsenal defenders and Arsenal midfielders like me because Tottenham and Man City are not straightforward fixtures. Then what happens? Arsenal keeps a clean sheet and then Saka has the assist. And for those of you Gabriel owners, I'm sure you're very, very happy right now. People put in Pedro Porro. Pedro Porro concedes. The Arsenal defender who's on the bench doesn't. People were hoping for Brighton to hammer Ipswich. Clean sheet. People were hoping for Isak to do something. He gets substituted at halftime. Crystal Palace get a penalty. You think it's going to be Eze who takes it, but no, for whatever reason, it's Mateta now who takes penalties. For those Fulham owners, 90 plus 5, that is when the goal was scored. Danny Ings, 95th minute equalizer. Heartbreak. A bunch of people, if you remember in the previous pod, I talked about a bunch of you guys removing Watkins. What does Watkins do? Comes back with 2 goals. People expecting a live wire match from Chelsea, 1-0. Palmer, nothing. Some people also moved off of Haaland because there were fears that he wouldn't play because he had a tragedy close to him and they thought he was not going to be in the right mental state. But that man is a machine. 2 goals. He could even have had 2 or 3 more after that. And if you watch Solanke, he could have scored. Also, if you saw Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Oh my goodness, that was painful. He should have scored. For all of you Rodgers owners, watching Watkins miss the assist, painful again. So I feel like that is a fair wrap-up of why things didn't go the way we thought they would. So now let's look at the fixtures. So let's start with the biggest disappointment of the weekend. And that belongs to Liverpool 0, Nottingham Forest 1. In this game, I don't even know where Salah was. He was like a spectator. It was reminiscent of the end of Klopp's reign last season, where you have Salah, but he's doing nothing. Diaz looked like he could have scored. He hit the post. Jota was lively. And that was really it. Forest had a few chances, but the goal that was scored was a beautiful one. The keeper had absolutely no chance. Callum Hudson-Odoi from Elanga. Beautiful goal. That, along with Harvey Barnes and the John Duran goal, those were my 3 best goals of the weekend. And if you haven't seen those goals yet, please do. They're delightful. Before this, all the talk was about Liverpool, the defense. Will Arne Slot make it to be the first manager to win his first 4 games in a row? Nottingham Forest were having none of it. Football is not a game for giving you what you deserve. Football is about taking what you want or just lucking your way through it. And Forest defended really well. Aina was really impressive at the back. Murillo as well. They were really solid in defense. So it may be a little bit unfair of me to say Salah did nothing. The defenders were really on top of their game in this match, and they really couldn't really attack them in the way they would have wanted to. Like I said, Callum Hudson-Odoi got the goal from Elanga. The bonus points, Sells got 3, Aina got 2, Alex Moreno got 1, and Callum Hudson-Odoi got 1. For runners-up, in terms of a disappointing match, you have Brighton 0, Ipswich 0. Brighton were the better team, but they just could not take their chances. It's quite funny. An interesting early observation from me is that Brighton seemed to be better at defense this time compared to last season, while Everton seemed to be better at attack this season than they were last season. Muric, the Ipswich keeper, finished with 3 bonus points. Veltman from Brighton got 2, and O'Shea got 1. Defense won the game, or rather, won the points. The most exciting game of the weekend also happened to be the highest scoring game of the weekend. Aston Villa 3, Everton 2. Now, Everton did it again. It was like watching last week's game, but with a different script. They go 2-0 up, and then they just capitulate. Now, I don't know what's going on with them, but at least they can score. They do not have the defensive backbone that they had last season, but they can definitely put the ball in the back of the net. Maybe when Branthwaite comes back, they will be able to balance those two and put something forward. Now, the goal of the game was John Duran's goal, arguably goal of the weekend. A great way to win any match. I think Pickford could have done better, but it is what it is. I would discourage you from having an Everton defender for right now, at least up until they have Branthwaite back. One of the most important things that happened is that our friend, Mr. Watkins, is back. 2 goals. Imagine how painful it is. Removing Watkins, and then he scores 2 goals. The assists came from Barkley and Digne. From the Everton side, Calvert-Lewin and McNeil scored. The assist came from McNeil. Now, moving forward, as you look into Everton assets, I think that those are just the main 2. Although you'll be very frustrated because Dominic Calvert-Lewin misses chances. So many, it'll hurt you. Watkins finished with 3 bonus points. McNeil finished with 2. And John Duran finished with 1. The marquee game of the weekend saw Arsenal take on Tottenham at the Tottenham Stadium. It was a game that ended 1-0 with Arsenal winning. Watching the game, it was easy in the end, but Tottenham had their chances. It was a kind of game which could have had goals, but it just ended up being a tepid affair. If you're an Arsenal fan or even an Arsenal player, this is a very positive result. You're not a full-strength team and you beat a good team. Tottenham are not great at defending. We all know this. That is an open secret. They have a soft centre and they concede set pieces quite easily. Gabriel scored the header, a thumping header for the winner. An assist from Saka. Arsenal were really solid at the back. I feel really dumb for removing Ben White from my team, but it's okay. I still have Raya, so I will still expose the defense. Now, when it comes to bonus points, Gabriel, of course, had 3. Raya had 2. Shows you that he had to make the saves. And Saka had 1. At this point, I'm not sure how I feel about Spurs, but I don't feel like they are a contender. And by contender, I mean for like number 4 even. I feel like they are just a number 5 to 8 team. That is their peak. Of course, things could change, but early impressions are that they do not have enough to challenge for the top 3 even. This game week had 5 clean sheets, so that was much better than last week, which only had 1. So as we look at the performers, it will be much more rounded than it was last week. Starting with the goalkeepers, it must be said, Sanchez and Onana made penalty saves. I don't like it when they say penalty missed, because I feel like it takes credit away from the good work that the goalkeeper has done. Sanchez is a top performing keeper this time round. He has 15 points. Onana was the second with 13. Number 3 was Muric from the Ipswich game. Number 4 and 5 is a tie between Raya and Sells. They each had 9 points. When it comes to defenders, Gabriel, who we just spoke about, had 15 points, tied with De Ligt, 15 apiece. Number 3 was Diego Dalot, 11. Fabian Schär returned from his match suspension with 8, tied with Ola Aina from Forest with 8. Veltman, Fofana, O'Shea had 7. The top 5 midfielders are Dwight McNeil, who had 12. Mario Lemina from Wolves, he had 10. It was a good goal. Didi from Everton had 8, tied with Rashford, who had 8, and Barnes, who had 8. So that's the top 5. So, as you can tell, midfield was not king this weekend. When it comes to the forwards, Watkins, Mateta, and Haaland tied on 13 points. Raul Jimenez had 9. Vardy and Ings were tied at 8. Now, let's look at some stats coming from the weekend. Nottingham Forest's win at Anfield was the first time Forest have beaten Liverpool since 1969. Aston Villa versus Everton is the most played fixture in Premier League history. When Dwight Neal scored, he was the first player to score against Aston Villa at Villa Park since Lukaku did it in March 2016. Watkins' 2 goals saw him break his 8-match cold streak. With 56 goals scored for Everton, Dominic Calvert-Lewin is now a 3rd top scorer for Everton, tied with Tim Cahill, legend. That man was a legend. With those 2 goals, Watkins now becomes tied 2nd for Villa's top scorer. Do you know who the other player is? None other than Dwight York. Can you believe Forest hadn't beaten Liverpool at Anfield in 28 attempts? In the Man City game, Wissa scored after 23 seconds. You don't know how painful that was. First of all, think you're going to get a clean sheet, and then finding out the 1-0, and then discovering your defender is not even playing. So it's like, okay, you're disappointed, and then you're happy, and then you're disappointed. Brentford were the last team to beat Manchester City at the Etihad. And this, by at the Etihad, I mean in the Premier League. And that was in 2022. Garnacho scored, and this saw him end his 11-goal game drought. Bournemouth versus Chelsea saw a total of 14 yellow cards shown, and that is a Premier League record. On top of that, this game week saw 60 yellow cards shown. That was also a Premier League record for one weekend. Brighton and Ipswich, that matchup became the 936th different fixture to be played in the Premier League. That game was also interesting because it was the youngest combined age for managers since Roulette versus Pierce in 1994. With Newcastle's win over the weekend, it is the first time that they have won 3 of their 4 opening games since 2001, when the late Sir Bobby Robson was their manager. Harvey Barnes has returned 22 points in his last 3 game weeks, and he has only been on the pitch for 135 minutes. Captain Obvious, Mr. Haaland scored, and this sees him score 9 goals in his first 4 games. That is a new Premier League record. This man is just a record maker. And then on top of that, he has got more goals than pretty much all the teams. He has 9, Chelsea has 8. As you can imagine, after his 2-goal haul, Haaland is the top player brought in this game week, with 146,000 bringing him in for this coming week. Luis Diaz is in number 2 with 141,000. Watkins, number 3, with 135,000. Vardy, 120,000. Smith Rowe, 118,000. When it comes to removing people, Isak is the first player out with 226. João Pedro, 163. Vardiol, 117. Eze, people are done with him now, 77. And Saka, 71k have removed him. The global average this week was 51. So if you got above 51, well done. The highest player globally got 120 points. They used their triple captain and they chose Haaland, which makes sense. Strike partner was Watkins, who had 13, Ings, who had 8, Bowen had 5, Eze had 2, Smith Rowe had 7, Garnacho had 6. At the back, he had Cucurella, who had 5, Saliba, who had 5, Gabriel, who had 15, and Sanchez, who had 15. It's a good team. The highest player in our league is Gift Choni FC, managed by Gift Omolangi. Gift had 86 points. Up top, Haaland was the captain, 26 points. Vice captain, Watkins with 13. In midfield, Fernandes with 5, Saka with 7, Kudus with 2, Longstaff with 1. At the back, De Ligt with 15. Great call. Akanji with 2, Saliba with 5, Mosquera with 1, and in goalkeeping, Raya had 9 points, which led to a grand total of 86. Now let me read for you our lowest team. 22 points. It's a very painful team because it is such a good team on paper and in theory, but on ground, totally different. So, up top, Kai Havertz, 2, Isak, 1, Wood, 2, midfield, Jota, 1, Gordon, 2, Mbomo, 2, Salah captain, 4. And then at the back, Pedro Porro, 2, Rico Lewis, 1, Akanji, 2, Pope, 3. So this person got 22. And the painful part is the bench. Onana, 13 points. Rashford, 8 points. That would have changed their whole team. But yeah, fantasy stuff. Fantasy is very tough. At number 1, we have James Victor, who has 83 points. Really did well, considering number 1 got 86. That's a good way to take the tabletop. Now, they are 10 points over TK. So with the 83 points, James has 327 points. And this opens up a 10-point lead at the top. Our number 1 to 12 have seen our table cross the 300 points barrier. So, like I said, number 1 is James Victor, 83 points, which sees him have a total of 327. Number 2 is TK, who is manager of Sui, 317. Number 3, Don't Mind, manager of Team Don't, 311. CPELFA United is number 4 with 309, tied with Oreo FC with 309 points. Number 6 sees Playboy Fatty have 308 points. Number 7 sees Hafsa Yusuf have 306 points. Number 8, Fahmi Zulkifly, manager of Fleet United, has 305 points. Franklin Asiema, manager of The Truth, 302. Abdullah Kili has 301 points. Abdulaziz Guled has 300 points, tied with MK, manager of Turn Up, 300 points. And that's the top 10. So from number 1 to number 12, it's a 27-point gap. So you can see the table is starting to grow, or rather the gap between the top is beginning to grow. At the very last, we have Gwan Kimko. Gwan Kimko is a very interesting manager because they have 95 points. Now, you would think with 95 points that they joined this week or last week or the week before. No, they've been playing the whole time. And this is why I tell you guys, you should not be deducting points. After 4 weeks, 95 points. That's an average of, goodness, 20-something points. That's tough. But when you lose so many points, it adds up. And so as you're making your transfers plan, count. Because if you think they don't add up, look at this person. This is how you end up creating a gap. So our first player has 327 and our last has 95. That's crazy. The most popular captain choice was Haaland, with 57% of us choosing Haaland as our captain. Mo Salah was number 2 with 31% of us choosing him as captain. Number 3 was Palmer, with 3% of us choosing him as captain. And then Luis Diaz, with 2.5% choosing him as captain, and Watkins, with 1.5% of us choosing him as captain. Looking at the most owned players in our group, Haaland tops the table with 73.5% of us owning him, and then Salah with 65, followed by Isak with 48% owning him, João Pedro 40.5%, and at number 5 is Saka with 37. Then you have Pedro Porro, Palmer, Trent, and Eze to round up the top 10. So in case you're wondering who to choose, these are the most popular players that have been chosen in our group. In our group, the most popular players brought in, I'm just going to read the top 5. João Pedro was brought in by 28 managers. Luis Diaz was brought in by 19 managers. Salah was brought in by 15 managers. Welbeck was brought in by 12 managers. And Mitoma, tied with Onana for 5th, were brought in by 10 managers apiece. The most popular players out of our league, Saka, 12 people removed him. Isak, 11. Haaland was removed by 8. Watkins removed by 8. Muniz removed by 8, tied with Nkunku. You guys who removed Haaland, I don't understand you. But those who removed Watkins, fine. But Haaland makes 0 sense to me. The average for points was 52.1 in our group. Looking at this weekend's fixtures, the first game will be Chelsea versus West Ham. Chelsea beat Bournemouth last time out. That was a game that could have gone either way, but Chelsea have been lucky because if this was last season, they would have lost that game. West Ham, with Danny Ings, scored at the death. So both teams have reason to be optimistic about the future. In the last 5 encounters, Chelsea have won 3, lost 1, and drawn 1. And in the most recent fixture, they hammered them 5-0. So, and that was at home. It must be said, Chelsea have won at home, they have lost away or drawn. So Chelsea are playing this game away at West Ham. So it may be skewed towards West Ham, but they have a new manager, and like I've said a few times. I don't trust Lopetegui. Now, the thing about Chelsea is this rotation thing is just going to be so weird. Europe begins this week, and this means that we are about to see so many squad rotations, so many midweek injuries, and just unpredictability across the board. You've seen what international break has done. This will be a version of that, but on a lighter scale. The only thing we're sure of when it comes to Chelsea is that Palmer will play because he's not registered for Europe. So you don't need to worry about that. And it might be of importance to pay attention to Chelsea's European fixtures because Madueke, before the Wolves game, had a really great showing against Servette. And so whoever probably performs well in Europe would probably be given a chance to play with Palmer during the weekend. A few weeks ago, I asked you guys to exercise caution because of the whole, I'm going to call it the Doku effect. Madueke had that crazy game and has been quiet ever since. I know a bunch of you brought him in, but he seems to have just disappeared. That partnership that we thought was going to bloom, nothing. And then on top of that, if you have Palmer, it's now Jadon Sancho and Nkunku. So now it makes you wonder, do we bring Nkunku back? Goodness, it's really tough to know with Chelsea players. The depth available to them is ridiculous. I would say for now, the best bets are still Palmer and Jackson Martinez. And maybe even a defender. Maybe their luck has turned. Maybe they're going to be defending better. So maybe the keeper or maybe Kukureya. Yeah. When it comes to West Ham, Bowen has been consistent so far. Their best player this season. And then after that, you could try Souček, or maybe you want to bring in Ings or Antonio. Having given my monologue about Europe, it must be stated that Chelsea will not play in Europe until next week, the 3rd of October. But after West Ham, they will have Brighton, Forest, Liverpool, Newcastle and Man United. So, given that run of fixtures, it may not be the greatest time to get Chelsea players in. After Chelsea, West Ham have Brentford, Ipswich, Tottenham, and Man United. Mixed bag. Aston Villa versus Wolves. In the most recent 5 fixtures, Aston Villa have won 1, drawn 2, lost 2. Now, it must be said, out of the Emery reign, it's been more favourable towards Aston Villa, and so it looks like this could be a tight game. Strand Larsen has been looking good. He is creative. He moves. He threatens. He's like a budget Haaland, just like the way Cunha is a budget Neymar. Anyway, Cunha, Haaland, Ait-Nouri, Lemina, those are the best players in Wolves. Now, Ait-Nouri is good because he's a defender who attacks. The problem is they don't keep clean sheets, so it doesn't really look good or add up to anything. So you're better off with either Cunha or Strand Larsen, not captaining them, but just having them, should you want players from this team. On the other end, Aston Villa just had a great comeback, defeating Everton 3-2. Watkins and John Duran did the business. Now, they will make their Champions League debut this week against Young Boys on Tuesday, which is tomorrow or today, depending on when you listen to this. And then they will have Wolves, Ipswich, Bayern Munich, Man United, Fulham. So, the thing about Aston Villa is that we do not know how their rotation will work, but their players will be affected by rotation. We've just witnessed what Pep did with Vardiol, Lewis, Bernardo Silva not playing or playing under 45 minutes. I believe Aston Villa will be facing similar problems. So it will be very important to choose your assets wisely. Having said that, I believe that Watkins is the best choice. Digne has been looking quietly good and he's reasonably priced. Ross Barkley came on for Onana, who picked up a knock, and he was also good. He provided an assist for the goal. So the midfield isn't clear. So if you're choosing Villa players, I would advise you to choose after Champions League. Wolves have Liverpool, Brentford, City, and Brighton after Villa. So their fixtures are undesirable. So do not rush into getting Wolves players. Fulham versus Newcastle. Newcastle have won their previous 5 encounters. Doesn't matter where they play, Newcastle win. So I'm going to make a bold statement here. Newcastle will be favourites for this game. Now, Isak was brought off at halftime in the last game, and the manager said it was an eye issue. I mean, I guess if you can't see, you can't see. So maybe it isn't that serious, and maybe the situation has cleared up by now, or maybe it will have cleared up by the weekend. So if you still have Isak, don't jump the gun just yet. Wait for further news. But if you're done with him, that's also fine. This game is away from home. He doesn't tend to score away from home. I would say your best player from this team is Harvey Barnes. He had the record before, 22 points in 137 minutes. That's really impressive. They don't have the distraction of Europe, and I think that they should have a strong campaign. The problem with Newcastle now is that it's really hard to choose a wing-back. You choose Trippier today, he doesn't play. You remove him, he plays. That whole Lewis Hall, Livramento, Trippier thing, it's going to be quite interesting. And so you're probably better off choosing Shah from the back. From the Fulham side, Raul Jimenez seems to be back. I think Muniz is done. Maybe he's a second half of the season type of guy. I don't know. But Jimenez would be your best bet for a goal. Emil Smith-Rowe and Robinson would also be great acquisitions from Fulham, should you need that many. Fulham have Forest, City, Aston Villa, Everton and Brentford after this. So they get difficult and then winnable. So if you're looking to get into Fulham players, I'd encourage you to get into them after the Manchester City game. Newcastle after Fulham will have City, Everton, Brighton, Chelsea and Arsenal. So the next 5 fixtures, at least 4 of the 5, will be quite challenging for them. All losable games. Leicester City versus Everton. I am just going to say that I feel like bringing in Jamie Vardy. Everton can't keep a clean sheet right now, and this is the right kind of game. Leicester drew 2-2 last time out. They will feel like they can beat Everton, and they have every right to think so. Everton seem to be able to score, so I would suggest, if you're looking to get into them, Dwight McNeil or Dominic Calvert-Lewin, whichever one or both of them. They have been good to start the season so far. Do not get an Everton defender. If you are getting a Leicester player, Jamie Vardy looks good. And then after that, I would say maybe Mavididi. Yeah. Or Fatau. That's about it. I don't expect a clean sheet in this game. After this game, Leicester will have Arsenal, Bournemouth, Southampton, Forest, and Ipswich. So after the Arsenal game, they could be quite an interesting team for getting some assets. Differentials could be found in their matchups. Everton will have Crystal Palace, Newcastle, Ipswich, Fulham, and Southampton. So it looks like they're going to be playing bottom half of the table teams after Newcastle. So depending on how it goes, Dominic Calvert-Lewin might be good for the long haul. Liverpool versus Bournemouth. Liverpool have won 4 out of the last 5 encounters, losing only 1. They are heavily favoured in this game, just like they were against Forest. So what does that mean? If you watch that game, Forest went out not to lose that game. I'm not sure Iraola has the personnel or the players to repeat that type of a performance. And I think that will play well into Liverpool's hands because Iraola likes to attack. They had their chances against Chelsea. Evan Nilsson missed a penalty. Sorry, it was saved. He missed it, but he missed it because it was saved. He didn't kick it out. it was saved. So the thing is, they will be able to create chances. But will they put them away? It's not clear. Liverpool will be looking to be getting their revenge after that loss. However, they have a small gap in between, and they're going to be playing in Europe. They're going to be playing the Champions League, Milan. Now, the thing is, it's not clear what type of manager Slot is. I mean, he seems to be a good one so far, but how will he handle rotation? Was his team unfocused because they were focusing on Europe? Like, there are going to be very many questions asked of him, and we will get one of the answers this weekend. Now, if you're making your moves, try not to move for these European teams right now, especially those who are playing in Champions League. Try not to get into them right now. Thursday after you know that they have come out unscathed. Now, if you're choosing a Liverpool player, you're most likely going to have Salah, Diaz, Jota. Those are your three favorite players from that team, most likely to cause damage. From Bournemouth, I would say Tavernier, Semenyo, and Evan Nilsson. He is cooking a bit. He will get there. But Semenyo first, Tavernier second. A lot of people moved into Liverpool and they got three players and were disappointed this past weekend. However, that was a long-term play because after Bournemouth, they have Wolves, Crystal Palace, Chelsea, Arsenal and Brighton, I guess. Maybe not such a long-term move, but at least for 3 of those 5 fixtures, those are winnable by their standards. Bournemouth, on the other hand, their fixtures are just increasing in difficulty. After Liverpool, they will have Southampton and Leicester, 2 bottom-side teams. So, 2 fixtures, great. Then they'll have Arsenal, Villa, Man City, 3 losses. So they need to pick up these points. Southampton versus Ipswich. Now, in the last 5 fixtures, there have been 2 draws, 1 victory for Southampton and 2 victories for Ipswich. So basically that's a short way of saying Ipswich are favoured in this encounter. They will be able to play that fully expansion. It would be like Burnley. Like, remember how Burnley were last season against the bottom teams? They just destroyed them. I think that's what we're going to have this time. Ipswich are better than these other 2. Well, I don't know about the other 2, but they're better than Southampton. And it should show. Delap, Greaves, Davis, Hutchinson are the best options from Ipswich. Also Smotsic, but I think I've said it wrongly. But you just have to choose. After this, Ipswich will have Villa, West Ham, Everton, Brentford, and Leicester. Those are just games. It's hard to know with Ipswich. I haven't figured them out yet. I still think they are not cut out for this level yet. But those are not particularly difficult games considering how their season started. Southampton, for me, are relegation favourites. They seem to be like Ipswich or Burnley last season, where they have a style of football they want to play, but they just can't play it at this level. They do not have the capacity or the confidence or the execution. And they will continue to be punished as they were by Manchester United. To be fair, for at least like the first 20 minutes, up until the penalty got saved, they looked like they could have threatened. And then once Man United scored, that was it. It was game over. They just cracked. But anyway, should you want to choose a Southampton player, Dibbling is quite good. When he runs with the ball, he created the penalty. He will be somebody who will create trouble. And he's only 4.5. Outside him, you have Archer, who missed the penalty, and Bertrand Diaz. I would stay away from the defenders, even though they have a good keeper in Ramsdale. Now, the next 5 fixtures are Bournemouth, Arsenal, Leicester, City, Everton. It's going to be a long season for Southampton. And I would say for these first few weeks, targeting Southampton and Everton defense is a great strategy. Go for that. Tottenham versus Brentford. The record is quite interesting. 3 draws and 1 win for either side. Now, Both teams lost over the weekend. Brentford lost to Man City, but that's not anything to be sad about. But for the first 20 minutes, they were absolutely incredible. If they were more clinical in front of goal, they could have gone 2 or 3 goals up. Now, if they play against this Tottenham team which cannot defend in the same way, they should get something out of this game. Now, Wissa went down and it's not clear how long he will be out for. So, Bumo is the best asset right now from Brentford. The problem with Brentford is that they're so random. I'm not sure who would be a good player to recommend from their team outside Bumo. Because you could try your luck with Lewis Potter, or Nogard, or Janelt, or Damsgaard. But really after Bumo and Wissa, it was usually a random defender. So maybe Bumo and a random defender. When it comes to Spurs, a team that disappoints me so much, I don't even know what to do. Let's see. Okay. I am not encouraged by Son at 10.0 and Solanke there. He's going to be stuck in the wing position and he seems to flourish in the striking position. I would struggle to recommend him. I would say go for Maddison and your choice of Pedro Porro or Romero because they will create chances, but they are so profligate in front of goal. It's such a disappointment. I'm just down on them right now, which is maybe clouding my judgment. But there's no captain obvious. There's no obvious pick from this team, right? So, after the Brentford game, they will have Man United, Brighton, West Ham, Crystal Palace, and Aston Villa. Really a mixed bag, and all of those are just winnable games. But with them, who knows? They create chances, but they just can't execute. Brentford, on the other hand, will have West Ham, Wolves, Man United, Ipswich, and Fulham. And in my eyes, those are all winnable games. So it might not be bad to just try your luck with Mbumo. Crystal Palace versus Manchester United. The last 5 encounters have seen 2 wins for each side and a draw, which means this game is more evenly balanced than we would think. Last time out, Crystal Palace drew with Leicester. From my point of view, it just seems like what they lost with Olise has not been replaced. Nketiah looked encouraging, and he might be a differential later, but just now, it hasn't yet come together. But he might score as soon as next game. He had a really good chance. But they just don't seem as dynamic as they were with Olise. Glasner has to figure it out, otherwise this team of his is going to be down there in the relegation battle. Eze isn't on penalty kicks, or rather, him and Mateta decide on the pitch who will take. So it's a tough one. Mateta, Eze, and Nketiah are your best chances from Crystal Palace. From Man United, Fernandes finally got a return, so he stayed in my team. He, Rashford, Zexi are good choices to have. Garnacho scored, so you can't say he's a bad choice either. And their defenders, if you believe they'll keep a clean sheet, their league scored. Onana saved a penalty. It's encouraging at the back. It's just that going forward doesn't quite look the same. I'm not yet sold, but this could be a good game for me to start thinking that Man United have figured things out, or are beginning to figure things out. After Crystal Palace, Man United will have Spurs, Villa, Brentford, West Ham, Chelsea. So, not straightforward games by any means. I could see them lose all of them. I could see them win all of them. I could see them draw all of them, and everything in between. That's just where Man U are right now. Crystal Palace have Everton, Liverpool, Forest, Spurs, and Wolves. So these are better fixtures. They're probably going to lose 2 out of those 5, but they will challenge. And it might be a time to look into Mateta or whoever your Eze alternative is, because I know a lot of people are down on Eze right now. But having seen that Watkins was removed and he brought 2 goals, might this be Eze's turn? Bam, bam, bam. On the Sunday, we will have Brighton versus Nottingham Forest. Now, in the previous matches, Brighton has won 2, lost 2, drawn 1. So it seems like a fairly balanced fixture. Now, if you're looking at Forest, the same guys apply. You have your Wood, you have your Callum Hudson-Odoi, Elanga, and of course, Morgan Gibbs-White. And this, of course, all depends on your budget. Now, in the last game, they played a flat midfield without either wingers of Hudson-Odoi or Elanga. I don't think they would do the same against Brighton, but should they come on, at least you know they're going to be quite troublesome. So stick with them. It's kind of like Harvey Barnes in Newcastle. He may not start, but you know he's going to come on and bring everything that he has. From the Brighton side, if you haven't removed João Pedro already, because I've seen many people have, don't bring him back in. But Mitoma, Minte, João Pedro, Wilbeck, those are the best players. Now, they have kept 2 clean sheets so far, so Dunk is really cheap, and so I would encourage him. That's about it. Now, Brighton, after Forest, will play Chelsea, Spurs, Newcastle, Wolves, and Liverpool. So the next 5-6 fixtures are difficult. So do not be getting into Brighton with a long-term view. Forest, on the other hand, have kind of fixtures. After Brighton, they have Fulham, Chelsea, Crystal Palace, Leicester, West Ham. That's not to say they're easy, but they can do something in these games. I mean, they just beat Liverpool. Who are the rest of these guys? Game week 5 will end with Arsenal versus Manchester City. This is, of course, the marquee game, and it should be quite telling of what the Premier League will hold for us this season. Many of the neutrals will be hoping that Pep doesn't run away with it, so the neutrals will be hoping that it looks tighter. I mean, City have won 4 of the last 5, and they'll be hoping that this is a season that this doesn't happen. 4 in a row is too much. It's going to look like a farmers' league. So I'm sure many people will be looking towards Arsenal doing something. However, having said that, Manchester City are arguably the best side in Europe. They are definitely by far the best team in England. Haaland is the best striker in the Premier League. I was going to remove Bernardo Silva from my team, and then I remembered that he plays in the big games. So I am anticipating him playing in this game. Of course, they have Champions League, so that will affect what they do in terms of if they get an injury or not. From the Arsenal end, Rice will be back. I would say Rice will be fresh and ready to go, although they will be playing Champions League, so there is that. Now, you have Saka, Havertz, Rice. Those are my 3 choices. And of course, if you're a defense guy, this might be a 1-0 game. Either way, in the last 5 Premier League games, Manchester City have won 4 out of the 5 encounters. They've lost 1. So they are favourites for this game. It must be said, in the recent encounters, Arsenal have been better. They have been steadily improving. And this game is going to be close to call. However, I wouldn't advise you to remove any of your players. I am still leaning towards Manchester City because Haaland has started incredibly. They seem to have just picked up where they left off. Of course, injuries to either team could affect what happens on the pitch. But should nothing happen, Haaland, Bernardo Silva, and Savio are the best Manchester City players for me. Arsenal, you have Saka, Havertz, and Rice. After this, in the Premier League, Arsenal will have a relatively easy stretch because they will have Leicester, Southampton, Bournemouth, and then Liverpool and Newcastle. So that won't be easy, but it will be a bit of a stretch that they can relax a bit. Man City, on the other hand, will have Newcastle, Fulham, Wolves, Southampton, and Bournemouth, all winnable game. Now, when it comes to choosing your captain, who are your choices? If you feel lucky, Palmer will be fresh and ready to go from the West Ham Chelsea game. Watkins could be good against Wolves. Newcastle, Fulham, I'm not sure there's a captain there. Everton, Leicester, not sure there's a captain there. Of course, Dwight McNeil and DCL have been good. Liverpool versus Bournemouth, Salah, obvious. Diaz, less obvious. And then Semenyo. Southampton, Ipswich, I'm not sure that's a captain game. Spurs, Brentford, maybe Mbeumo. Man United, I would struggle to choose a captain from this fixture as well. Brighton, Nottingham Forest, I don't know. Manchester City, Arsenal, Haaland, he scored 9 goals already. You just have to choose him. What about you? Who are your captain choices? Let me know. Outside that, I hope you enjoy the return of the Champions League. Have a great week. See you on the pitch. Bye.